In this video, we'll talk about the daily and weekly price action of Tesla. I know everyone loves to hate it. We'll talk about the long and short dated options interest, and we'll touch on some Tesla news. There's always stuff going on for Tesla, and we'll check that out. Long story short, still a core position in my portfolio and expecting big things 2026, 2027. But I wouldn't get too excited about 2025 price action if I was you. But let's get into it. All right, let's look at the chart. Oh, I've just noticed my glasses are super reflective of that light. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but we'll go on. So Tesla right now, it's actually been holding up relatively strong, I'd say, given the general market weakness we're getting and all the stuff happening with the China tariff beef. We do have this kind of decent volume shelf coming out here. I'd love to see price stay above that. That said, it's always good to be excited when the stock pumps and when it dumps, because if this one dropped all the way back down to 350 where this massive volume is, I would love that, especially if that waited till later in the year. However, I do think this upcoming earnings is going to be fairly decent. The car numbers should be good, which seems to be a lot of what people base their prices on for Tesla. It's not really what I'm looking at, and I'm not too bothered by price action, over the next year or so. I'm really looking quite far forward with Tesla. But I am excited. I do think Tesla's going to probably see out the year above $500, which will be quite annoying. So because crypto is running a little bit later, I won't have the opportunity to rotate as much capital into Tesla. So it sort of breaks down that game plan that I had. Hopefully we can still catch a good bid on that one. That's especially true after the crypto flush at the weekend. So obviously I'm not rotating crypto gains into Tesla right now because crypto's doing worse than Tesla. Hopefully that makes sense. But below that little volume shelf that we're kind of building now, we've also got this little gap fill here, $400. So if earnings is bad and the market doesn't like it, that's going to be your downside move target on that one. Upside target move though will be kind of like 480 area. Let's have a look, see what percentage that is. Quite a big move on that one. We'll look at the options market, see what they're thinking about earnings as well. That should give us more of an idea on relative direction. But can I move this down? We also have this measured move working here. Now, I don't really want to sell out too much of my Tesla position until we get to that area. That measured move took a long time to make, so it will eventually hit that target. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to take days or weeks. It could take months to hit that, and I'm absolutely fine with this asset being volatile around that period as well. The RSI did have time to cool off a little bit during this chop, so we have some upside where we can pump on earnings for that. MACDX Plus also looks pretty good and stable. Now I've started to use this new BX trend. Sorry, my voice went a bit funny then. Instead of Bankflow, I still use Bankflow, but I alternate between the two. They sort of show a similar thing, but it's easier to translate with bullish and bearish momentum on this one than it is with the bank flow. With the bank flow one, I'm looking more for the golden bars to signify when we're going to get a bottom reversal. Obviously, this stock is priced, it's not bottoming, it's about to make all-time highs, so that indicator doesn't work as well. That's more for long-term basing. Big pattern though, that does look like it could be a real nice cup and handle if we do ebb along here a little bit more. Looking at the weekly though, it's a bit more. Sorry, my charts are getting so busy, it's hard to see. Again, we could say this is another cup and handle, but it's a little bit messy and it's not one I would base hopes and dreams on, but it does give us a little bit of confluence to its side. I haven't marked it on my chart as a cup and handle to trade, just because it's a little bit messy. The cup and handle would be this part up to this handle. I don't like that it had this big move up here. That kind of invalidates the cup and handle for me personally, so I'm not using that one to base price off. So yeah, not too much more to talk about on that. The RSI is getting a little bit spicy on the weekly, so we could see a little bit more cool off there. We do have some upside potential for a pop. So I think if we do have a pop on earnings, it's probably going to slide off after that and have a little bit of a technical cool off. So something to bear in mind if you're just planning on trading that event. That said, Tesla earnings are notoriously difficult to predict direction of. It can they can have really good earnings and the stock does a doo-doo. They can have really bad earnings and the stock can moon. Tesla earnings are a lot more about sentiment and how people perceive them. If Elon comes in, and absolutely nails it with his energy and his conviction, then it's likely going to be a pop, especially after the news around the affordable model. I think there'll be a lot of questions around their plan around that, and having done a bit more research, I'm not as annoyed about the price point of that new vehicle lineup. So we'll see in earnings, which is the 25th, so about 12 days. I think that makes that exciting. I don't know if we're going to run up into earnings. I think we're going to chop around a bit, develop that handle that we talked about on the chart. Let's look at the options market though, because I think that's going to tell us more exciting things. Apologies for the darker video in the earlier section. I realised I didn't turn my backlight on, so hopefully it's a little bit brighter and my glasses are a little bit less shiny. But yes, look at this, amazing. Market makers also sitting at $500. So absolutely, if we do get a big pop on earnings, market makers are going to insist on keeping it under $500. Stop these people going in the money and getting some nice premium return for their troubles. What else were we looking at? Support as well on here. Market makers don't want to let it drop below 370. So it's pretty much in the range we were looking at on the charts. We do have a lot of downside excitement below this, but we talked about this for the last few times I've done Tesla videos. These positions were very well priced, so I expect that this is some hedging if we do have a recession. Obviously, car companies going to be prime culprits on that one. Just out of curiosity, let's pull the chart down. There's a lot of interest in 820 for, that's quite unlikely. But what date is earnings? When does that fall in? Did I say the 25th? Yeah, the 25th will be this one. So for the week of Tesla's earnings, there's a lot more strike interest in the downside. So institutions and a lot of the bigger investors are betting that Tesla pulls back on that. So these are timed to expire the week of Tesla earnings. So bear that in mind. Whilst I'm leaning on the side of people are expecting bad and it's going to be pretty good, that's not currently what the big boys are thinking, and it's not always good to be on the opposite side of them. So I could be wrong. This is telling me I might be wrong, but it's always interesting to know. But like I say, Tesla for me is a 2026, 2027 bet, so we always need to go look at the longer dated options on this one. We get a lot more excited volume here for the upside. Much bigger leaps. We still have the downside, but not much more volume than we're currently working with. So this certainly tells me there's some hedging and a lot more bigger bets being placed into the future on Tesla. So 2027. Bear in mind on these, time does decay these a lot as well. 2027 though, very interesting. Very little downside expectation for Tesla, so they're going to break and run according to institutions and the big boys are not taking long-term negative bets on Tesla right now. And that's not to say it won't change in the future. Chances are I do think there will be something in the economy that will break further down the line. Tesla could be a victim of that depending on the scenario and whatnot. So we always have to keep our ear to the ground for macro. So Tesla news, we've got the same chart we always put on Fintel. Institutions still been increasing their positioning on this one. Slow and steady now, winning the race. I also want to talk about Jeremy Lefebvre, I think that's his name. Really big YouTuber. It's probably popped up in everyone's feed. He is really super against Tesla all of a sudden, and now he's announced that he's putting on this 2x leverage position. He is using it as a hedge and he's been very clear about that, but a lot of his comments have been super negative towards how the business is being run, which strikes me as kind of odd because years ago I'm pretty sure Jeremy made a lot of his initial money from Tesla during a phase kind of like this where they were ramping up. So it seems weird to be positioned against it during the same kind of situation now. But also this hedge, it must be a really small part of his portfolio because it's only around about $24,000. And I'm pretty sure his public portfolio is around 4 million, something like that. So it's quite a small micro position. So the words he's saying don't necessarily line up with the numbers he's putting on. If he was so bearish Tesla, you'd have like a core 10% position and short it, but that's not the case. Also, I think a lot of people seem to think he's still an investor. This guy makes a lot of his money from YouTube. He probably makes way more money from the programs and he sells and the platforms he's offering, his YouTube streaming and all that. He probably makes way more money on any of that stuff than he does actually manage his portfolio now. So maybe to get a little bit more clickbait, that's where he's going on this one. But to me, $25,000, $24,000, it just seems like a nothing burger to hedge with. But I'm just saying that because someone was like, oh, this really amazing investor's negative on Tesla. Just bear in mind a bit of the details and a bit of why he might be saying these things. So always ask the questions. It might not necessarily be true, and time will tell, but always ask the questions. Other than that, though, we touched on it earlier about the affordable car coming out. Initially, I was a bit butthurt by the price point on that. I thought they didn't offer enough car for that, but as I've compared it to other cars in the price range, I do think it's a good offer, and I think it was smart to come out with that range and gradually reduce the cogs on that over time, lower the price on it over time, but not interfere too much with the robo-taxi plan and not take away too much time or sight from that. So having thought about it and looked through it, I'm not as negative as I initially was. I did have some questions about it. I basically thought that you would get a little bit more car for your money than they seem to have given. Maybe that changes over time. But again, I think the next quarter, numbers-wise, for the car side of the business should be good. Obviously, there was a boom in a lot of areas, people trying to get the tax credits before they went. The new Model Y, I think the longer car they released in China has been super popular. Their inventory's running low. Just everyone moaning about the car business. The car business actually looks pretty good right now. Is that going to last past this quarter? We'll see. These new cars coming out does offer a much bigger total addressable market, so we'll have to see on the uptake on that. They've gone straight into production, which is pretty awesome. Earnings calls coming up. Probably going to be a bunch of questions about that. And I can almost guarantee someone's going to ask the question about pricing in the Q&A. So I expect the stock price to react choppy to that question, depending on what they say. Other Tesla news, the new FSD version looks pretty damn amazing. It's probably never going to get to the UK because we're so bureaucratic here. We're just going to skip AI cars altogether. But having a quick look through the newsfeed on Tesla, blah, 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 mainly about ramping up productions. Yeah, not too exciting. A lot of the Tesla news very drib-drab lately. The Tesla China insurance data update looks decent. I can just pull this up and have a quick look. Model Y is up 58%. These numbers look pretty good, guys. Not gonna lie. I'm excited. I crossed off it. Bear with me. Sorry, should have read this before I started recording, then I wouldn't have to be so confused. The Model Y has ramped up quite quickly with the insurance numbers towards the last week of September. It was very popular. So that's exciting. Any other Tesla news? Feel free to comment below if you find some Tesla news that you want me to comment on. I haven't been totally invested in Tesla news this week because crypto is where I'm at. That's what I'm doing. That's where I'm mainly focused. That doesn't mean I'm completely hands off everything else. I am always looking at the charts and keeping abreast of essential information. Tesla quarterly domestic sales, pretty dang good. Q3, 107, well, just under 170,000 units compared to Q1, which is 134. Pretty good. It is lower year over year than last year, but higher than the year before. So, we're starting to go back in the right direction, and I think this will only improve as rates come down in the US as well. And there's less squeeze on the people that actually want to buy cars, can actually have money to afford a car, or at least be able to afford the finance. Q4 last year had really low numbers at the first part. Well, I shouldn't say really low, they're about on par with what we're at now, but low for the year. So could be on par for a good end. We're going to need a good strong end. Last Q4 I think was just under 200,000 vehicles, and if we get anywhere near that would give us 4, 5, 6. That'd be very close to the year's vehicles last year, which would be nice. A lot of people saying there's no chance of that happening, but we will see. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed this content, feel free to share it with your mum, your nan, your dad, your dog, whoever. And I'll see you next time.